Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So you mentioned you worked at PBS.
I did. That was my first job after I graduated from college. I did not know what I wanted to do, but I thought I could. I really loved PBS. It was something that I watched growing up a lot. I really did. Like I
Why are you
loved.
embarrassed about that?
I'm
You're on
not.
public
I.
radio right now. You're not on E-Talk. This is the place where we're going to be like, oh yeah, man, Masterpiece Theater, give it to me. We're not going to be, we're not going to slime
No,
you.
I remember that was like the first, I remembered seeing my first black and white movie on, they used to show old black and white movies. That was my first time seeing that. Because we were poor, and so we didn't have cable or anything like that. So it was a lot of just watching whatever was available.
So I heard it was PBS that brought you to acting. It was while you were at PBS.
No, well,
You kind of fell into it.
yeah, I didn't, have any major declarative moment where I said I'm going to be an actor, but I thought maybe I could supplement my income by booking a silly commercial for something, and then I came to realize that it's actually very hard to book a commercial, and you have to have a particular skill set, and the people that you see on commercials, if you really pay attention to them, they're the same 10 actors who book all of the commercials.
But I thought I heard a story about you, like, see if I can get this right. It was something like you had some kind of fear or some kind of like stage fright or fear of acting or something like that. And it was a bit of what we call exposure therapy, like, getting in front of a camera and doing it.
I started to take improv classes and public speaking classes because I was a bit of an introvert. I still am. And yeah, I had enough positive feedback from people, and I thought, well, if they're telling me and they don't have any reason for blowing smoke up my butt, maybe I should try to pursue this. And I met a sitcom director while I was in New York who told me that I should move out to LA, and so that's really, really what sort of gave me the courage and confidence to move out there and try it.
Feels like a bit of a risk.
Yeah, but I wasn't really doing anything in New York that I felt like, was really substantial and was keeping me there. So I was happy to try something new.
I want to talk a little bit about this movie. So in American Woman, you play a political activist who helps take care of a group of fugitives, including an heiress. So when you watch the film, it's pretty clear that this is a fictionalized version of the story of Patty Hearst, or, the kind of very famous kidnapping of Patty Hearst and kind of what happens afterwards. What was it about this story and this sort of iteration of the story that got you involved, or what made you want to be part of it?
Well, I had never heard of Wendy Yoshimura, who is the Japanese-American woman that my character is based off of.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about her for people who haven't seen the film?
Yes. So American Woman, the film, is based off of the novel also titled American Woman. That novel was written by Susan Choi, and it was shortlisted for the Pulitzer. Susan is this amazing, amazing writer, and I read the script first, and Semi Chellis, our writer-director, wrote for Mad Men and the Romanoffs. She works with Matt Weiner a lot. And I just felt like there was this voice behind the script, because usually when I read a script, it's pretty instructional. There's not really a voice that comes through. And when you read a script written by, say, Alexander Payne or, Paul Thomas Anderson, like there's a certain soulfulness that comes out of it, and all of the characters are drawn so specifically and delicately and carefully, and you don't often see that in a script. So when I read the script, I just immediately wanted to meet Semi and sit down with her, and we talked for like 3 hours the very first time that we met, and I just liked her as a person, and I just wanted to work with her. So that was great, because sometimes I'll meet with a director and I think, yeah,
No thanks.
like this one I can let this one go and it's okay.
Mm-hmm. So tell me about Wendy then.
Wendy, so my character is, her name is Jenny for the purposes of the story, because not much is actually known about Wendy Yoshimura or what actually took place between her and Patty Hearst. Wendy was arrested at the same time, or was captured at the same time as Patty Hearst when the FBI busted in on them in San Francisco. And for some reason, the news never paid attention to her, and nobody ever really looked into her story or asked any questions. Nobody was curious about her simply because she was just an Asian woman, and nobody really cared. They just wanted to get the Patty Hearst story. And so Susan Choi, the novelist, was interested in this Wendy Yoshimura and decided to do the research and dreamt up this really beautiful fictional relationship. And a lot of it is based off of fact, and you could sort of feel like this may be what happened between the two of them.
Is Wendy still with us?
She is. Not much is known about her, but what I do know is that she lives in Oakland and paints watercolors and has a dog. So that's all that we know.
Have you got a chance to talk to her or anything? Have you tried?
No. I didn't think that it was really important for the story.
Yeah.
And also, I think personally, I don't think that she would welcome that because she herself hasn't really said much publicly about it.
So the film's been at a couple of festivals so far. What kind of response have you been getting to the character?
Good, I think. I mean, I don't really pay attention too much to I guess the response, or I'm trying not to, and just let things breathe and be what they are, and not, if somebody says something good, you also have to believe the bad, right? If somebody says something bad about it. So I'm happy that it's out there. I don't think a lot of people have seen it yet. It's only been at Tribeca. I'm happy to have it shown tonight. There's going to be 2 screenings of it, and I don't remember the names of the theaters.
That's
all
right. This is not airing tonight, so don't
okay.
worry about it. It's fine.
Yeah, so we'll see. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it? I mean, this is based on a true story. But I have to say, when I watched it, I was thinking about the true story. Does that add something to you to know that kind of a responsibility of telling someone's actual story?
I started to do a little bit of research, and Semi, our director, said, don't do that because I'm not making a biopic. She wanted to tell a story that was more immediate and something that would interest younger people, a younger generation. And I understand why, because a lot of the things that the characters are talking about in our movie are the same things that people are talking about today, where the world is not as we would like for it to be. A lot of young people feel like things are bad right now. And there's a lot of truth to that. And I think the older generation who has maybe been through some things and weathered some storms maybe don't feel quite the sense of despair or hopelessness that maybe young people feel right now. And a lot of people want change and don't really know how to go about it, and are trying to create some sort of radical movements and some sort of revolution socially and culturally. And how far do you go with that? There are a lot of people who are centrists, who are sort of moderates and kind of can see both sides of things, and like to say that progress is slow, but we are moving in the right direction.
And then there are those who like to make things happen really quickly.
Yeah, make things happen really quickly. And so there are those characters in our story as well.
I heard that it was meaningful for you to be in a film set in the 70s, in sort of a period piece.
Well, I think that I don't know how it is in Canada, but in the U.S., I feel like it's not often that you see stories that are from the point of view of an Asian American woman, and from a woman who is not from a privileged background, because that sort of thing is a bit of an easier sell. right? If you have like really, it doesn't matter what skin color you are. If you're wearing fabulous clothes and you're driving fabulous cars and live in a fabulous house, anybody will really, watch that, or that's an easy thing to sell. But if you're talking about, not only is it a person of color, it's also a woman, and it's also a woman from like, maybe a disadvantaged background. Then people start to shy away from that, or they get a little, cagey and think, oh, well, I don't want to get depressed or be brought down. I just want to watch something fun, So that's always a hard sell for people, but I feel like those characters are the most interesting ones. There's a lot of depth, a lot of layers, and
I mean, I heard that the director, I heard that Semi Chalice herself was sort of pushed not to have, even though it's this novel is based on the story of this real woman, to not have an Asian woman in the film, to replace it with somebody else. Am I onto something there?
I think
To change your character?
I think that might have been a conversation earlier on. I don't have all the details of that, but I think Semi did mention to me the first time that I met her. People were saying to her, we would love for you to make your first film, but like, why this one? Why this? This is so hard. Why would you choose this one as your first film? Like, why not choose one of these, A, B, C, or D? And, she stuck to her guns, and thankfully she did. And that's why I was able to be a part of it. I don't know. I think people were trying to be helpful by saying like, oh, maybe you should change the Asian character to a black woman, at least. You might get a little bit more traction that way, and thankfully I think those kind of attitudes are changing. I don't know how many years ago this was that she had that conversation, and I don't know who it was with. But I think, people are, broadening their horizons. They're seeing that stories with people that you wouldn't necessarily think are bankable or can sell magazine covers and that sort of thing can be interesting lead characters and actors that an audience wants to follow.
If you're just tuning in, I'm speaking with Hong Chau. She stars in the new film American Woman, which is based on a fictionalized story. You might be familiar with from the 1970s about the kidnapping of Patty Hearst, where Hong plays. It's told from the story of a real life woman named Wendy Yoshimura. But I think I first saw you at the last TIFF. You mentioned Alexander Payne earlier.
That was my first TIFF. Yeah.
You mentioned Alexander when you read a script by someone, you mentioned Alexander Payne. I think I saw you in Downsizing in 2017. That was a very big role for you. That must have been a bit of a breakthrough for you, hey?
It was. That was my second movie ever.
You nominated for a Globe, right? A Golden Globe, Critics' Choice Award.
Yeah.
What did that role mean to you?
It was. First of all, I was such a huge Alexander Payne fan, so regardless of whether the role had a lot in common with my own biography was beside the point. I just really love his choices in terms of who he chooses to feature in his movies. They're not these spectacular, larger than life sort of people, but he makes them seem that way. They're just, normal, average people from the Midwest, usually from Nebraska, and he's able to entertain us and thrill us with these really wild and funny stories. And he did that with Downsizing, I thought, really remarkably well and just beautifully. And I was very touched when I was reading the script, and it was also so funny and bizarre and wild, and something that I felt like I hadn't seen ever. And it was nice to play a Vietnamese character. I'm Vietnamese. My parents left Vietnam after the war, and by boat. They were a part of the whole boat exodus. And I was born in a refugee camp in Thailand and ended up in New Orleans in Louisiana because, we had a sponsor family over there. So a lot of the story was, I felt a connection to it. It wasn't a direct, but it was an adjacent story to my family story.
Earlier, when you said it struck me when you said I don't try to read any press at all, whether because if you're going to read the if you're going to ignore the bad, you got to ignore the good too. You got to try to ignore all of it. And I couldn't help but think, because I remember, and I'm not going to get you to defend any decisions or even talk about any decisions back then, but I remember watching the film and then reading about the film afterwards, the Downsizing film, and there were all these kind of discussions about, you know, your accent, and you kind of came out and that it was somehow somewhat of a mockery accent. You came out and said, no, this is actually how people talk. This is actually how my folks talk. I'm less interested in like the nuts and bolts of that stuff, but I'm more interested in what it does to you then to have this kind of breakout role and then to all of a sudden have to do this press and have all these kind of criticism and all these questions about a choice that you made that felt very true to you. It must have been odd.
Yeah.
If I can say that word, odd.
Thank you for saying that. It was very odd. It was very odd for me. I had the best time making that film, the best time, and then it was just the complete opposite doing the press and the interviews for it. Because, look, if you want to be topical or dissect a film in that way, why not talk about the environment or something? You know, like that was also a major part of the film, but I guess it was just a little bit easier to talk about my accent, and then that just showed me. Well, I guess you just don't know a lot of Vietnamese people or refugees or immigrants who come over and, you know, don't speak English and have to learn like on the go. You know, I think what people don't understand is that there's a huge diversity even within a group. Like there's a huge diversity within Asian Americans or Asian North Americans, however you want to say it. There's a huge difference between somebody like me, whose parents came over, they, you know, didn't have a high level of education in Vietnam, let alone here in the U.S. And so if your parents come over as professors, biochemistry professors, or, you know, whatever, there's a huge difference between an Asian kid like that and an Asian kid like me. So that was my background, that was my upbringing. And so I feel like a lot of the people who, even if they're people of color or Asian Americans who do work in media, I think maybe that might be more their background. And so, you know, maybe they didn't feel like my character represented them, but that's beside the point. You know, you don't get to say that that's wrong or that that's racist or that it's, you know,
because it was true to your experience.
It was, and it was a beautiful character. It was really well written. It was not just this throwaway, you know, in there for 5-second character. It was the female lead of the movie, and I often feel like directors have their secret favorite character in a project that they do, and I felt like in that movie it was that character.
And did your folks get to see Downsizing?
They did. They saw it at a regular little theater in Louisiana.
Yeah, because I heard that. Because I heard they didn't go. You wanted them to come to the premiere, but they were working.
Yeah, it's like pulling teeth with them to, like, you know, get them excited about anything that other people are excited about. They're just like, oh, what's that? I don't know.
Did they know about the criticism, or did they like? Were they aware of that at all?
Yeah, I talked about it with them.
How did they feel about it?
I mean, you know, I think they understood. It's kind of like, oh, same as it ever was, you know, like we're poor, so
yeah.
like who cares about us? So, I don't know. I mean, I guess it brought us closer together because I don't often get to talk to them about things that I'm working on or feel like, you know, that they really relate to anything. You know, I just, everything else that I've ever worked on, besides like maybe Treme, in which I also played a character that was like pretty close to my own upbringing. Yeah, it's really hard to explain to them like the story and what's going on. It's like, okay, so it's set in this like weird time, and like I could not explain Watchmen to them. Like I wouldn't even try.
Were they able to make it to the premiere of American Women? You said this. It's like pulling teeth to get them to do anything. It's tonight. Are they here?
No, they're not here. No. No, they don't.
Come on, Mom and Dad.
I know.
Take the free flight.
I know.
God love them. But they must be very proud of you.
I hope so.
It's a risky thing you did, right? You could become an actor. Yeah. No, it is. Of course it is.
Is it?
Yeah, of course it is. The creative field, no matter who you are, it's a risky thing to do.
Yeah. I think they're just happy that I'm able to like pay my bills and that's pretty much it. But they don't. It was weird. My mom said to me, this is like months after the fact. She was like, "Oh yeah, I was talking to my friend who's a Vietnamese woman. She was like, yeah, she said that you were nominated for this thing and that's like really rare."
The Golden Globe, you mean?
That's really rare for Vietnamese people. Like that's never happened before. And I was like, yeah, I told you that. I told you that like months ago. But I guess it's not until like somebody, at the Vietnamese supermarket tells them that it actually really lands.
I'm sure they're very proud. I'm sure they're very proud of you.
Yeah, I'll say they are. Yeah.
Can you tell me anything about the new Watchmen, the new kind of DC comic film? You play opposite Regina Hall. I know that.
Regina King.
Regina King, my mistake.
Yeah, I know. They are often...
Oh, my mistake.
Confused. We've got an amazing cast on that show, actually. Jeremy Irons is in it, Gene Smart, Tim Blake Nelson, Lou Gossett Jr. It's an amazing cast. Damon Lindelof is the writer-creator of it. I was not at all interested in doing anything comic book related. I've turned down things in the past that were comic book related. The story didn't interest me,
right?
And this one did. I didn't know anything about Watchmen. I hadn't read the graphic novel, and I don't know. I don't know how it's going to be received. It's a really wild show with like a lot of ideas, and it's doing a lot. At least on the page, and what we filmed, it seems really ambitious, and I'm pretty sure they will pull it off. But I hope audiences enjoy it. And it's premiering October 20th.
I hope they do. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, same here.